Ladies and gentlemen, SideStrafe here today with some more War Thunder Ground Forces. And this is my wish list and feature suggestions for simulator battles. And I want to make sure that everybody is paying attention to the fact that I'm talking about simulator battles. I'm not talking about arcade. I'm not even really talking about realistic, but I'm talking about simulator battles. There's 3 modes in the game. And I think that the third one, which is called simulator battles, should be the most authentic, realistic simulator experience. Because when you call yourself simulator, there's a certain expectation there. And I don't think trying to claim only 1 out of 3 modes is asking for too much. I think it's fair. I think that everybody else out there that isn't looking for a simulator experience has 2 other modes and a variety of other games that they could play. So, please keep an open mind when listening to this. Think about it, share it, let it be known to the world that we, the simulator fan base, wants a game that is far more authentic than what's currently provided. And I know Gaijin is capable. I know at the core they are a good developer. I know that they can create. I know they have that power. I just think they need to be set on the right path and perhaps be provided with ideas that are feasible. So with that said, the rest of this video is going to be presented in a live commentary format. I will be in the menus in the game showing off examples and even loading up Iron Front Liberation 1944, which is another game that has a few tank ideas that I think work pretty well in any game engine. So with that, please sit back and enjoy. The minimap. Obviously a topic of great debate, especially within simulator battles. Clearly, it provides you with information you wouldn't have otherwise. Now, you can see here I've got my tank flipped around, everything looking front. I'm the commander, right? So I'm looking forward. Let's pretend we have a target up front. Commander's yelling at the gunner. Orders, the driver, everybody, they're all focused up front. In fact, some of the crew just doesn't have another view. But we can see down below, lower right hand corner, we have targets on the minimap that shouldn't be there in a simulation experience or even a realistic experience. We just wouldn't have that awareness, okay? Now, if we flip around, we see them coming, okay. Now, the problem is, for the person or people behind you, perhaps people are trying to flank. They're going around, they're like, okay, they don't know we're here, let's go all the way around. You try to sneak, and then you're punished for being smart. You're trying to work your way around a target, and your position is given up by the fact that you are spotted on the minimap when you simply should not be, okay? I can tell you, the amount of times I've been able to pull around an enemy, and he simply knows I'm coming because of that minimap, heartbreaking each and every time. It shouldn't exist. Spotting on the minimap like it is right now should not be a thing. I'm not against there being a map, okay, but there has to be another way to do this. I believe it should be turned off completely or possibly only available for actual spotting, such as in battlefield games where you can see a target and let's say that tree's a tank there and hit, you know, a key. I hit Q there because in Battlefield it's Q. Hit a key and it spots the enemy. Enemy tank sighted, and then it'll blip there for a little bit. Not forever, but for a little bit. Okay? And that is your way of simulating maybe radio communication or something. And you also have to remember that in World War II especially, radio communication was spotty. It was downright terrible, and a lot of early war tanks, especially Russian ones, didn't even have radios at all. Okay, some might have had some sort of signal flag or something, but you know, generally it's kind of like a game of follow the leader. That's all you had. But you know, in this case, to be able to see targets behind me, you know, that are back there that I shouldn't even be able to see, no, because that allows me to turn around perfectly and use the mini-map to figure out where they're at. And even behind, you know, tree cover, which this isn't a lot of cover there, but in some cases you get those maps where there's a lot of thick foliage, and they're hidden behind a tree completely. So let's actually even do that with that T-34 in the distance. So, you know, well, I'd have to back up even more. But you know what I mean. Let's say there's a tree in the way. See if we can get this one here. You know, normally there's a tree in the way. Let's pretend there's more foliage than that. Usually, like, you're looking around like, okay, I can't, you know, normally it'd be like, oh, where is he? Oh, I could barely see him. And, you know, that camouflage would be coming into play, and it would allow for somebody to use proper tactics and hide and cover themselves, especially if you're in a tank destroyer. But no, because of the mini-map, you can say, oh, look, yep. And I've even got the little thing that shows you kind of aiming in down the sight there. You can see how it closes in and out. You can kind of aim there and get an idea of where that opponent is and shoot. So that's something that I think needs to go as well, unfortunately. Now, you can see how it tries to fix itself a little bit. You can see the things dropping in and out of the map with the spawning system, which depends on your commander's experience and things like that, like the sight range of your crew. But in many cases, this is still just giving away positions, especially if you're flipped all the way around and you don't have eyes behind you, okay? So there's that. I honestly just think that it has to be removed, or possibly rethought out in a way that might help create some sort of radio communication situation or some sort of allied observation system. But right now, the way it is, it's just unacceptable. And I think it's punishing smart players, people that are trying to use cover, people that are trying to flank, people that are going the long way around a map to get behind that enemy and are punished because, oh, look, I spot this guy, even though my tank is not facing, and they turn around and they tell their friends, and that's it. So honestly, has to go. Sorry, at least from simulator battles. That's all I'm saying. Now, the next thing I want to talk about sort of relates to the tree cover thing we were talking about, and this does have to do with the hit camera being available in simulator battles. Obviously, we know Gaijin added this hit camera in the top right hand side. So you hit a tank, if you score a hit, it shows you where the round travels, what it's hitting inside the tank. Honestly, it's a cool feature. It's really nice. It's not perfect. Sometimes it's glitchy. I don't know if it's showing accurate information all the time, but it's cool and could be polished even more in the future. However, and here's where I'm kind of torn, because I was thinking about this for weeks. In simulator battles, should it exist? Okay, now, here's the thing. It's not a kill camera. It's not showing you where the shot's coming from, but it is giving you information that you would otherwise not have in a realistic situation. Okay, in World War II, nobody had this. Today, nobody has this, okay? You shouldn't be able to see these things in something called simulator, because here's why. Now, this guy's behind cover. Let's again, just because I don't want to spend the whole video trying to move around to prove my point, let's pretend the tree's covering all of him. Let's say I can't see him at all. I don't know where he's at. But a friend of mine said, hey, SideStrafe, there's a guy 500 meters or so, whatever, 12 o'clock, whatever. I'm like, okay, maybe I see a muzzle flash, a puff of smoke. And I was like, okay, I'm going to aim. I'm just going to guess. I go ahead and shoot. I guess. I was like, oh, I hit him. And then the hit camera pops up, and it says he's facing the front, or he's got his side facing you, like he is now in this example. Okay, oh, now I know where he is. Well, now that I know where that round landed, even though I can't see him, I'm going to change my shot. Maybe I'm going to change over here and start shooting at his engine like this. See, like, I can barely even see his tank now, but since I have that hit camera, I can figure out where his components are, and I can change my aim based on that hit camera. I learned from that camera where his engine was, and so I adjusted fire and put rounds of APCR into his engine, killing the tank. And so even though I agree that it's a cool camera, I agree it's a cool feature, at the end of the day, sadly, it doesn't make sense in simulator battles. So I have to vote for its removal from this mode, not the other ones. I think it's fine in the other modes, but I don't think it should exist here because it is hurting those of us who like to utilize cover. So if you're hiding in a bunch of trees and bushes, let's say you're a Jagdpanther and you're trying to use that cover, you're in a tank destroyer. It's all about camouflage. In World War II, camouflage, such a big deal, hiding behind things. Well, the hit camera will remove that camouflage. It's borderline cheating again, you know, as I was saying with the grass. So I honestly believe that it does need to go from this mode. I know a lot of people will disagree, but I think as you saw in that example, it allows me just to adjust my fire far too much and perhaps locate critical components within a tank when I just simply shouldn't. Again, we are simply arguing the definition of simulator or simulation, and unfortunately, as cool as the feature is, it would be a strike against that. Now, if the mini-map wasn't bad enough, how about being able to see the target with the UAV artillery? And here is a prime example. We've got an enemy on the other side here. Go ahead and call in some artillery, and he's going to start moving around because he's getting some radio information about the fact that we're dropping it, on top of the fact that things are exploding around him. So obviously this view, as you can see here, just simply doesn't belong in something called simulator battles. It's just nonsensical. This is my view, and look at the advantage that this is providing here. In fact, I'm hitting them a little bit. I can even zoom in. So this is just giving me far too much information, and I don't really even think I have to argue this one much anymore. It just doesn't make sense. I know that there's a lot of people that are against this existing in the game, period. Not even really just for simulator battles, but it's giving me way too much information. It's letting me know where he's looking. So now I can try to go up around him, maybe get behind him, since I know that he's paying attention to something on the other side. Of course, by me doing this, I might just get spotted on a mini-map, so it's hard to say, but we can try. But, you know, again, oh, where was he again? Oh, look, oh, hey, there's a KV-2 right there. But guess what's going to happen is he'll soon be aware of my position because of this mini-map. So I don't know if I'll even be able to pull this off. We can see that he's fired. I think somebody already killed him. We can know when and when not to move. It's just giving us far too much info, and he's dead now, thankfully, so there's that. But again, just a prime example of why that feature should not exist at all, really, in any game. It's so far-fetched. I'm actually shocked that it exists at all. I'm sorry, but I just don't know why it was ever thought to be a good idea. It's just hard for me to agree. Look at that headshot there. But, you know, it's just one of those things where I think that if they want to add some sort of artillery in this game, then there's going to have to be other ideas for them. Because right now, the way things are with this, if anything, it's hurting the gameplay in really any mode. You know, it recharges. I think a lot of people are just using it like a bunch of hand grenades, you know? It's just one of those things where it's just providing too much information, and it's allowing people to get in hits that they just shouldn't have. And let's face it, artillery is notorious for just being horribly inaccurate, and to be able to just call it in as simple as this, it's just not making much sense. And yeah, again, I don't really think we have to spend too much time on this. You can see how this is something that has to go. Alright, so next up, what we're going to do is actually switch to a different game. This is Iron Front Liberation 1944, which is a World War II game based on the Arma 2 engine. It's an older title at this point, and it's not really supported anymore, which is pretty much why I'm not playing it. But Anyway, this game did have a lot of great ideas, which I think Gaijin could implement. I'm going to show you right now live, of course. So here we are in a Panther tank, and we're in the Poland map, I think. So right now I'm in the driver position on the exterior, just to show you that we're in this different game, of course. But when we go back into the tank, you can see that we have a beautifully painted 2D interior. Now, I can't look around. It's not 3D. It's not like Red Orchestra or anything like that. But I think this gets the job done when it comes to creating some sort of simulation or interior for tanks without having to spend the time and money to create a 3D fully rendered and animated interior. Now, yes, I do like how Red Orchestra 2 works. I love the 3D interiors, but there's no way you're going to do that for hundreds of tanks, and it's just going to take a lot of work. It's a lot more than just making a cockpit for a plane. There's so much that goes into it, and it's not something that I would ever expect in a decent amount of time, while I would love it. But in this case, you can see here that this is painted very well. I'm sure Gaijin has the talent. We've seen them paint quite a few other things on their website and in the menus. I know they have talented art staff that I'm sure could create something even better than this. And so this is us in the driver's seat. Now, of course, this is a game that features multi-crewing, so it would have to be different. In War Thunder, there would have to be some sort of internal view. Maybe actually like Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4 has with their Abrams tanks. Maybe that's an even better example. It's kind of like a hybrid view between being able to see a bit of the hull of your tank and a gun sight. I don't know. In this example, now we're looking at the commander seat, which is in Iron Front supposed to be some sort of 360-degree periscope. I'm not a huge expert on tank internals. I don't know how many tanks actually had 360 degrees of rotation within the command seat. From what you can see on the outside here, it looks like it's just a lot of fixed view ports. So if it did actually have a 360 view, I don't know. All of the tanks in Iron Front actually have this view, so maybe it's just something that they're taking some liberties with. But in any case, I'm pretty sure Gaijin can do a really good job with this type of system or idea. Beyond that, there is, of course, the gunner seat, which, as you can see, has realistic, accurate gun sights from this Panther. On top of that, you can play with the elevation of the sight as much as you would be able to on the real one. As far as I know, this is similar to how it works. And it's, of course, fixed zoom, so if the tank didn't have it, it's not going to have it in the game. But as you can see here, this variant of the Panther had 2 levels of zoom here, and you can see switching between those two. And that was the case with a lot of tanks. You either had 1 level of zoom, or maybe you had 2. I don't know if there were any that had 3, at least in World War II, but... so it wasn't like you have a gigantic level of zoom like War Thunder has now. It's just in this Panther between the two, and as you'll see from our other examples, none at all. So there's that. And there's the shot out. Not really all that impressive in the sound department. You can also see the reload meter on the side there, which is actually kind of nice. And the reload times in this game were a little bit more believable. I feel that Gaijin tries to balance the game out by slowing down the reload process of heavier tanks. Honestly, I think they just need to look at the information. If the data states that the tank is able to be reloaded on average at a certain amount of time, then that's just the way it needs to be. But there's that there as well. So also nice just having a decent tank indication system or a compass rose. I think another thing they could learn from Red Orchestra actually is to have clock indicators so that you could talk to your friends a little bit easier and say, okay, contact 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever, and just point it out based on that clock, or perhaps even some sort of compass rose to help out with directions and things like that in game. But again, just a beautiful example of how the zoom system works here on tanks that have the appropriate sights, and then of course elevation and whatnot as well there. So that is lovely. Now going back out, if we switch over to the commander seat again, my AI is going to take control there a little bit, but we also have a turnout ability which allows us to look out there, and you can even see the gunner, the bow gunner, and the driver on the front have turned out as well. This would be great. I think Gaijin could model this as well to actually show that there's a commander out and about. On top of that, if you hit B in this game, you have binoculars so that you can see in the distance a little bit more than perhaps your gun sight would allow, or just give you a little bit more vision, 360 degree perhaps, if you're just in a safe area and you want to look out there. Also, I think you can see him using the binoculars. There you go. So that's pretty cool. And there's that. And then we can, of course, just get out of the tank, but I'm not going to do that. Oops, I got to hit B again, I think. Turn in, puts us inside the tank, all sealed up. We're ready to go. Okay, now you've got a loader seat in here, which has got this like little limited vision port view, just to give somebody something to do. This is a game where you can fully crew the tank. It's not really necessary to have this loader position in War Thunder, I don't think. But there's also the machine gunner or bow gunner chair with terrible sound effects, I might add, in this game. But here's this. This is the only view that you have here. And so that is that. And then once again, the driver's seat. So what I'm going to do now is actually transition to a different tank so we can see the differences of the interiors. Alright, so now we are inside of a Tiger 1, and the driver port is a little bit different. And we have similar seating arrangements here. There's, of course, our gunner view with its levels of zoom and elevation changes, of course, there. Reload time on the Tiger 1. A little bit longer, of course, than the 75, but still manageable. And then we can, of course, switch over to the... Oops, we can change ammo, yes, but we can go to the commander seat. Oh, yeah, speaking of changing ammo, Gaijin, can you let us change ammo without having to shoot the round, please? Thank you. Appreciate it. So here we can turn out. And it's nice that you can see the other guy next to you. This makes you actually feel like you are on top of a tank. So I really like that. Can turn in. And one thing I want to show off, if we can, I'll have to show it from this perspective. Although my gun is starting to face the wrong way. That's not really what I want. Gun is going to eventually look towards the front, I hope. Alright, so in this game, they tried to make the gun barrel an actual object, in that a lot of games, for some reason, allow it to clip through buildings and trees and other tanks, such as War Thunder and World of Tanks. Currently, you can drive right up to another tank or a building, and the gun barrel will just go all the way through. In Iron Front, they try to make the gun barrel an actual object. I say try because it doesn't always work. For example, here, as the driver, if I try to push my tank up to this building, okay, there's the hull touching the building. Now, if I move like this, you see that? I can't move because of the barrel. The barrel is stopping the tank from turning anymore. The barrel is an actual object. It won't clip. It does a little bit. It's a little glitchy, but you can see I cannot drive through this building because of that barrel. But if I move the barrel, you can see we're able to go as close to the building as we want. And again, just from this end. So it just won't work, okay? I like that. I think that's a requirement for any tank game, because it's a big part of tanking, is knowing where your barrel is and knowing if you're able to move the barrel around if you're in some sort of tree cover. Now Now, again, this doesn't always work, so if this doesn't work properly, I apologize, but this game is a bit glitchy. It is Arma engine. I believe you should be able to knock down trees. And see, right there, it's kind of clipping. I don't know if I ran it over, if I knocked it over with the barrel there. I'm going to try again. So, in that situation, I knocked that tree over with my barrel. Alright? Now, that tree is kind of a big tree. I don't really expect the turret to knock over all kinds of trees, you know, maybe thin little trees, but it is an example of how this gun barrel is an actual object and not just something that's going to clip through everything. So I would definitely love to see Gaijin implement some sort of technology for that, because I think it'll cut down on the amount of people trying to ram tanks, and it will force people to pay a little bit more attention to their cover. So I think that that's something that could exist in all of the modes, not just simulator battles. So next up, I'm going to just do one more example, take a look at a Sherman tank to show you its interior. Alright, so here we are within a Sherman tank in Iron Front Liberation 1944. You can see that the 2D painting is different, but we still got our armored glass and everything. Keep in mind that these might not be 100% accurate or legit. The sighting systems or the vision ports differed. There were quite a few models of Sherman tank, of course, as most of you know, and they had a direct vision port model, and then they had the periscope view as well, but this might not be perfect, but again, just a different idea here. And we can switch over to the commander, which again, they are taking a few liberties. Everything's not going to be perfect. It's kind of similar to the driver port, but kind of gives you an idea. Gunner seat, Sherman, weapon sight there as well. So we can, of course, take a look at the outside. And we can switch over to commander and also turn out.
Forward.
Like so. So you can see that I think these little things would add a great deal of dimension to War Thunder ground forces. I mean, especially just being able to see the crew there, being able to turn out, and then allow for players to use the bow machine gun or the turret machine gun. So, for example, if you see somebody like this just riding around, to get more vision, to perhaps look out with their binoculars, they can maybe be gunned down by the turret machine gun or maybe a bow gun, whatever, you know, perhaps even if you were to one day implement multi-crewing, which would be fantastic, I think. Maybe you got a guy in the bow gun and he wants to take out, you know, self-propelled guns or AA with crew, you know, showing.
Halt.
This would be a great way to do that. So, you know, I think these are all just a few ideas that Gaijin could implement that I think would be really, really simple. I know they've got some talented 2D artists that they could put to work with these, you know, these different mechanics. There's the bow gun there. So again, just to have these interiors. Now you can even see the interiors are the same there, but it's simple. I don't think it would take too much work. You could probably have an artist knock this out in no time flat. And I think it would help, especially considering the amount of tanks that are in War Thunder or going to be. I don't really expect 3D interiors for everything, although it would be cool. I'm not saying not to do it, but I just don't see it happening. It could take months to make just one interior, which is why Red Orchestra only has about 4 tanks with fully rendered 3D interiors. So there is that idea, and hopefully a few of those could be implemented. Alright, so now we're going back to some War Thunder footage. This is, of course, a match in my Jagdpanther where my engine was kind of messed up, but we did get some payback there. Anyways, saving the best for last, respawn mechanics. I've been arguing about this for a very long time now, and simply shocked that you can respawn in a simulator battle mode. But anyway, how can we improve this? Okay, now most of you that know me know that I enjoy games that don't have respawns, mostly because I think it causes people to slow down, or it forces people to slow down and think about what they're doing. Because, hey, it's called simulator battle, right? We're trying to simulate a real situation here. So Obviously, if you get hit, you're gone, you're done. There's no second try unless it's just an injury that you can somehow walk away from. Now, in this situation, it's twofold because you have a tank that's filled with crewmates. For one, I think that the damage system to individual crew is a bit generous. For example, you'll see the hit camera and notice that you got a headshot on a crew member, and it'll say, oh, they're simply unconscious. Last time I checked, APCR through the brain tends to kill a human being, but, you know, I don't know. I get it's a video game, but I think that you should have to drive back to base, rearm, refit, get new crew, whatever, and then go back into the fight, at the very least. But beyond that, if your tank is destroyed, then there's no coming back from that. You've lost. You failed. Whether it was your fault or somebody else's fault, whatever, it's over. So, how can we make a compromise for this, perhaps? Considering that this is a video game and nothing is perfect, how can we maybe settle somewhere that would work for both parties? Okay, well, let's think about this, all right? Especially considering that this is a game with only tanks and not necessarily combined arms. Planes are a factor, but not to a major extent. So in World War II, if we discuss American armor tactics, we know that a lot of their tanks were not designed for tank-to-tank combat. They were designed to support infantry, and of course infantry would support armor, and then there would be self-propelled guns, towed anti-tank guns, and then of course later the Americans started creating anti-tank vehicles, M10 Wolverine, M18 Hellcat, which of course were not always that effective anyway. So Sherman tanks, early American tanks, short barrel 75mm guns, not really designed to take on Panthers and Tigers and so on and so forth. So they had a tough time. But they did have numbers and their tanks were far more reliable. So how do you recreate that in a video game? Well, the reliability factor's out the window. Obviously, you're not going to have German tanks breaking down on the field, although I think it would be kind of funny. Yeah, I'm not going to have that. But, you know, you're not going to have those kinds of things. You're not going to have infantry supporting you. You don't have towed anti-tank guns supporting you unless they're AI. You do have air support sometimes, not in simulator battles. It seems like it's only in realistic and arcade. But how can we make it even or somehow level the playing field for weaker tanks? Well, we could talk about reinforcements, and with that we could look at real-time strategy games like Men of War Assault Squad, or maybe even Company of Heroes, that have sometimes reinforcement systems, at least in the single-player campaigns. When discussing Company of Heroes, Men of War, of course, reinforcements is a major part of the gameplay, where you're spending most of your time trying to earn points in order to call in reinforcements. Now, realistic battles within War Thunder has a similar setup. You can earn spawn points by eliminating enemies. If you don't kill anybody, then you're not coming back. Funny enough, I almost think that that should be in SB and not in realistic. It's almost backwards right now. But with that said, I don't think that that's good enough. I think that if you're eliminated, your tank is destroyed, you're on fire, you blow up, you're done, okay? You're not coming back, at least not immediately. However, option number one perhaps could revolve around an objective point. Let's say you have to capture a radio tower, or you have to capture some sort of facility or building on the map that would allow you to call reinforcements and bring players back to the fight. So let's say your buddy gets destroyed right next to you, all right? You manage to survive, you take out the target that took him out, he's out for the game. Unless you move up to Objective Alpha and you take that building and you can then radio in for support, a minute later, you got reinforcements, they can respawn in a fresh tank off of the field, they come in, roll down and try to catch up to you. Now, they're not going to spawn right next to you. They're going to spawn a good distance away, but I think that's one compromise to allow people to come back into the same battle. And if they stick around for that battle, if they don't just leave the game and try to fight in another battle, then they get rewarded more points, that they get more achievements, and they get more credits and experience. A lot more. Not just a little bit, but a lot. In fact, you should get rewarded to high hell for playing simulator battle. You should get way more credits and way more experience for even being in this mode in the first place. because this mode is supposed to be more challenging, and when you overcome a challenge, then, well, you should be rewarded properly for doing so. But beyond that, that's just one idea, having some sort of reinforcement system. Now, you could also look into nation-specific. So obviously the Americans would have more reinforcements, but the Germans would have tougher tanks. Germans wouldn't get as many opportunities to respawn, but they would start out with bigger tanks, more armor, bigger guns and whatnot. Of course, we'd be looking at historical accuracy. You would be able to create historical events that make sense and simply utilize a reinforcement system to make up for the lack of players you might actually have on the field. On top of that, I do believe that in some cases you just need to skew the numbers. So the Americans would just need to have more tanks, whereas the Germans would have fewer, but perhaps just better. Now, we would want to simulate that, of course, as close as we possibly could to specific battles, but I think it could work. It did technically work in World of Tanks when they did historical mode. There just weren't enough players playing the mode for it to be popular or successful. I think the idea was sound. It's just not going to work in an arcade game. Beyond all that, imagine the level of excitement that these new modes would bring to the game, because currently that's one of the biggest complaints, is that you just got boring capture objectives that don't really even make much sense. So imagine having to hold a radio tower or a fuel depot or some sort of repair facility, and knowing that if the enemy takes it, that you can't call in reinforcements anymore, or that you can't repair tanks anymore. Just the possibilities are endless by adding simple objectives. And if you think about it, if you're worried about camping, you have to know that there is a way to prevent that. Let's take Company of Heroes, for example, a very famous World War II RTS game. It's not the most realistic thing on the planet, but if you think about that game, it's always about putting your team on the offensive. If you're not taking territory, if you're not taking critical resource points, you're losing, and you're not able to create more vehicles and infantry. So in this mode, I think in a round-based mode, I think you could easily implement some things that we're seeing in strategy games, such as COH or Men of War, and be able to provide players with exciting modes that keep them coming back for way more. And if you provide these extremely tactical and realistic modes within simulator battles and not include them in any of the other modes, you're going to bring more players into these modes, and you're going to reward them for being here. Gaijin and members of the community, you have to remember that to some people, realism is fun. Simulators are fun. You have to understand that that's where we're coming from. You can't just use that excuse of, well, they shouldn't do that because that's not fun. If you say that, that's your opinion. Because to some people, playing a hardcore game of Rainbow Six or Arma 3 is fun. Not respawning is part of that fun. We want that tactical gameplay. We exist. Look at those of us that have spent money on Elite Dangerous or Star Citizen. Yes, there are people that want that atmosphere. Look at the people that spend money on DCS World. That is an even more hardcore simulation, and one that probably goes above and beyond what we actually require. With that said, I think that there are a variety of ways to make this work. I am going to leave the comment section open this time around so that you guys can discuss and perhaps come up with some of your own ideas. But, you know, please make sure that you're keeping an open mind to some of these ideas, and keep in mind that we are also only talking about one mode here and not trying to destroy any of the other modes for anybody else, because there are some people that just like those modes, and that's fine. Sometimes I like to see my tank in third person, so I hop into realistic battle, but it's not my favorite thing to do. I think that there is room for a simulator battle community, and I, quite frankly, I'm tired of those people that are coming in from other games or other communities and that are trying to take all of the modes for themselves. Sorry, but this isn't arcade mode plus plus. This is simulator battles. And you need to understand that simulator actually means something to those of us that went to school to get an education. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, do your part. Get out there, join the forums, fight for your right to party, and have a simulator battle that actually doesn't suck. With that said, thank you so very much for joining me. I will definitely see you on the next one.